What's up, my friends? Welcome to New View Tech Review. My name is David Gelly, and today we are reviewing the iPhone X. So here it is, the future of the iPhone, a $1,200 future if you get the 256GB model. But we shouldn't be too surprised. Phones have been slowly increasing in price over the past few years, and let's be real here, this is Apple we're talking about. This is expected, but of course not desired. So is the iPhone X worth the extra cash? Let's dig in and find out. Let me first start off by saying that this design is just top-notch. It's a sleek, sharp, beautifully crafted device, and the clean design on the back just makes it all the better. I'm not quite sure why they didn't remove the literature from the bottom of the device years ago. The stainless steel surrounding the border of the phone makes holding it feel that much more premium, even though it's now more susceptible to scratching. It just feels so good to hold that you won't want to put it down. The overall footprint of the X is slightly bigger than the iPhone 8 and actually smaller than that of the 8 Plus, but manages to have a bigger screen. This is probably the best compromise that you can get if you've been wanting an iPhone that's bigger than the iPhone 8 without having to jump all the way up to the massive 8 Plus. The iPhone X comes in at 5.65 inches tall, 2.79 inches wide, 7.7 millimeters thick, and weighs 6.14 ounces. I feel that Apple really got this one right in terms of size. This is the space gray model, which is never really consistent in color from year to year, but it still looks great. It also comes in silver, which really looks like more of a pearl white to me. But there is no gold variant, which seems like a strange choice to me, but makes sense considering the production issues they've had with the X. The glass on the front and back does a pretty good job at repelling oil from fingerprints thanks to the oleophobic coating. Wiping them off with a microfiber cloth is a breeze. The iPhone X is IP67 water and dust resistant and can be submerged in up to 3 feet of water for about 30 minutes. The one thing about the design that I'm having trouble getting used to is the camera bump. You thought I was going to say the notch, didn't you? The camera bump is way too big in my opinion. When you compare it to other phones in this price range, like the Note 8, it kind of makes you wonder why Apple hasn't fixed this yet. And then to make it boxy as compared to the more curved camera bumps on the 7 and 7 Plus, as well as adding the flash to the middle of the lens, why? It just looks ugly. They could just make the phone a bit thicker to hide the camera bump, while at the same time giving us a bigger battery and better specs. It's a win-win. However, adding a case to the phone, which you know you're going to do anyway, does help hide the unsightly mountain protruding from the back of the phone. I'll rate the overall design a 9 out of 10. I can handle the notch, but that camera bump. Come on, Apple. It's 2017. Let's move past that wobbly design. The iPhone X is Apple's first attempt at an OLED display on any iPhone, and they nailed it. The screen dons a 458 ppi Super Retina HD OLED display, coming in at 5.8 inches. It's bright, vivid, and so realistic looking that it almost seems as if the display is a piece of paper that you could physically peel off of the phone. The quality is right up there with the Note 8, and probably has something to do with Samsung producing the panels for Apple. But hey, who says you can't be a team player, right? Also, Apple gives you the option of enabling the True Tone feature, which gives you a more accurate color display depending on your surroundings. But I find it to look strange because it always seems to give off a yellowish tint that makes my eyes wig out. Something that I'm not a huge fan of, but I guess I can understand why some might prefer it. So far, this is Apple's closest iPhone to being considered bezel-less, but of course there's that notch at the top, and I actually find it to look kinda cool. Something about seeing the display perfectly curve around the corners leading all the way up to the notch just seems very futuristic. Now obviously some people will find it annoying, but for me it just ended up blending into the background. It's something that's always there, but once you realize its purpose and how much power resides in that little black bar, you eventually learn to, at the very least, appreciate what it can do. Plus, the software does a pretty good job of working with the notch by adding useful information like the battery and time to either side, and app developers are quickly following suit. Now of course with that notch being at the top of the display, we get a new biometric way to unlock your phone, Face ID. Setting it up is very easy, but unfortunately I haven't had the most flawless experience with Face ID when in use. I would say that it works about 70% of the time. Every so often I'll pick up my phone to view a notification on the lock screen, and it will just stay locked. It won't do what it's supposed to do. That's a pretty big issue, especially when there's no alternative to Face ID such as a fingerprint scanner. And to make matters worse, it's definitely slower than Touch ID ever was. However, I will say that when it does work, it can be pretty useful. And thanks to an infrared sensor in the notch housing, you can unlock your phone with Face ID in the dark. You can even physically see it scanning my face in some of these low light shots. Interestingly enough, bright conditions seem to cause Face ID to fail far more often than dark conditions. I think with a few software updates, it could at least end up being on par with the first generation of Touch ID. With Face ID, we now have the ability to create animojis, a fun way to send animated videos to family and friends with facial recognition tracking. It's really more of a gimmick than anything, but hey, the kids will like it. A cool feature that uses the Face ID sensor is attention awareness, which uses the true depth camera to detect whether you're looking at the display before dimming and eventually locking. It also requires you to be looking directly at the phone before unlocking, so a random stranger can't quickly scan your face and then run away with your ridiculously expensive investment. But with how hit or miss Face ID is at the moment, I don't really see that being an issue either way. Another cool feature that uses Face ID is lock screen notifications. When you receive a notification, your phone will light up and show the generic information pertaining to that text, email, or whatever it is that you received. But when you go to check your phone, the sensor will scan your face and unlock more details to each notification. A nice simple way to keep your notifications a bit more secure and private. Unfortunately, I have seen some minor software issues related to controlling notifications from the lock screen. One of the main ones that I've noticed is when I receive an email and then 3D touch the notification to send that email directly to the trash, the email never really deletes from the app and is still there lighting up my email app icon with that little red number 1. I end up having to go into the app and just delete it directly. Clearly, this is something that can be fixed, and it's still early after the release of the X, so minor flaws like this are expected. Though this does seem like a pretty basic thing for Apple employees to overlook. Now, since Face ID replaced Touch ID due to the full screen display, we no longer have a home button. The X uses a new gesture-based system. Here are a few of the basics. You now swipe up to go home. Swipe up and hold for open apps, and then touch, hold, and swipe to close them. Swipe right at the very bottom to get to the most recently used app. Swipe down at the very bottom of the display to activate reachability. Swipe down on the top right of your device to access your control panel, and down on the top left or middle to access your notifications panel. And if you're really not into using the new gestures but still want the iPhone X, there's no need to worry. Apple gives us access to Assistive Touch, a handy setting allowing for a software home button to be used instead of the new gestures. It's obviously not as nice as a physical home button, but at least it's an option. Overall, with this only being the first few weeks since the release of the X, I can say that it all works pretty well. It feels very natural after only a few hours of use, and I've only seen a few minor flaws that can be adjusted through software updates. Apple Pay is of course present on the iPhone X, which you can now access with a double click of the side button. It now uses Face ID to quickly scan your face. Then you simply hold your phone close to the payment terminal and you're paid. I was really surprised at how fast the process was when using it for the first time. It literally took a total of 5 seconds for the entire transaction. This is one of those examples where Face ID definitely worked as intended. And if you've seen any of my other reviews, you'll know how picky I can be with taptic feedback. If it ain't good, just do us a favor and remove it. Otherwise it just feels like an old basic flip phone with a crusty vibration motor. But luckily, Apple is sticking with the Taptic Engine that replaced the headphone jack. And honestly, I don't mind one bit. The Taptic Engine found on every iPhone since the 7 is unlike any other vibration motor out there. It's incredibly quick and sharp and makes navigating iOS fun. And if you're paying attention to it, I think you'll see what I mean. It makes the whole experience seem that much more responsive and intuitive, which is something that I don't really see many other manufacturers focusing on. Battery life is nothing special for a $1,000 phone, though it seems to have gotten a little better over time. Apple says that it should last about 2 hours longer than the iPhone 7. And to be clear, that's the 7, not the 7 Plus. An average day with moderate usage should get you through a full day. When you're not using your iPhone, that's where it really shines. The standby time on these bad boys is truly unlike any other phone out there. You can easily leave your iPhone unplugged at 10% battery life before going to bed, and wake up with it at 7%. No other smartphone that I'm aware of has come close to the standby time performance of iPhones. Oh, and for some reason, Apple removed the battery percentage info from the top of the display, but you can still check the percentage by pulling down the control panel or by swiping over to the widget screen. And now that it's 2017, we finally have wireless charging on an iPhone, and it even works through some thicker cases that I've tried. I find myself setting it on the wireless charger at home all the time because it's just so convenient. As for cameras, we get two 12 megapixel sensors on the back, The wide angle has an f1.8 aperture and the telephoto an f2.4 aperture, both with OIS. The front-facing true depth camera is 7 megapixels with an f2.2 aperture. Both the front and back cameras take nice clean photos, as we've come to expect from an iPhone. I did find the back camera to have some trouble focusing in certain lighting conditions, but I'm sure that will be fixed within the next few software updates. Video seems to be a bit grainy even when shooting at 1080p, which I hope will be fixed as well. Here's a quick sample of the back camera video quality, shot in 1080p at 60 frames per second. And if you want to bump that resolution up, you can record video in 4K, which seems a bit unnecessary to me, but if you plan to, then make sure to buy the 256GB model for all those large files that you will accrue. If you plan to shoot any action sequences, you have the option to record slow-mo video in 1080p at 120 or 240 frames per second. In the software, Apple gives us new portrait features that can be applied while using the front and back cameras. If you like the more professional photography bokeh effect, then you're set. And if you want the lighting conditions of a studio, then you're set here as well. My overall experience with taking pictures and video with the iPhone X wasn't quite what I expected or hoped for, especially with the $1,200 device. But every phone release has its hiccups in the first month or two that can be fixed with OS updates. And last but not least, audio. I've found the iPhone X to have some pretty good bass levels, just as Apple claimed during their September keynote. Listening to music with the stereo speakers is quite enjoyable. They are now 25% louder, and you can really tell. These guys can get up to 92 decibels, matching the iPhone 8 and beating the Note 8 by 3 decibels at max volume. Of course, they're not the front-facing speakers we see on some other flagship devices, but for what they are, I'd say that they're the next best thing. I definitely have no complaints, and I'm pretty picky about my audio. At this point, I feel like this isn't really necessary to say, but just for the sake of clarity, there is no headphone jack on the X. With everything heading towards a wireless future, this continued trend just makes sense. It clears up space in the housing for better specs and gives Apple an excuse to charge extra money for wireless AirPods. As for the earpods that come in the box, they're great. A well-balanced EQ and pretty much the same exact quality we've seen from the earpods since their release. Overall, after being an Android guy for the past 5 years, I'll say that this phone is worth the switch to iOS if you've already been considering jumping ship from the little green robot. And so far, I have no regrets. Yeah, it's a lot of money, but what else would you expect from Apple's 10-year anniversary phone? Plus, some of the other 2017 flagships are not at all that far behind this price point anyway. The X fits right in with all the other phones out there, with its new, precisely crafted modern design. The perfectly rounded display corners, Face ID, the look, the feel, it all adds up to something that I believe Apple should be proud of, and I'm sure they are. That's all I had for you today, my friends. I hope you enjoyed this review of the iPhone X. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more content. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.